Mom kicked me out at 16, but took my pregnant sister in. Now she and her deadbeat boyfriend tried to break into my house after I refused to hand it over. I'm a 28-year-old woman and things have always been a bit rocky with my mom and my younger sister, Rose, who's 22. When I was just 16, my mom kicked me out of the house just because I had a boyfriend. I wasn't doing anything wild like drugs or stealing, I was just dating someone from school. But she freaked out when she found out and decided I couldn't stay. So, I ended up crashing at a friend's place while still managing to keep up with school. To make ends meet, I got a job at a local diner and saved every single penny. I juggled morning shifts before school and evening ones after, plus weekends. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't really afford, but I managed to put myself through college without a dime from my family. Fast forward to now, and I've got a pretty solid job in finance. I even bought myself a small vacation spot by the lake a couple of years ago, nothing too extravagant, but it's mine, and I work damn hard for it. It's my little escape where I can just chill and find some peace. The place does need some work, the kitchen's outdated, the deck needs fixing, and the plumbing's a bit iffy, but I love it, quirks and all. Now, let's talk about Rose. She's always been the golden child. When she got pregnant during her sophomore year at college, my mom welcomed her back home with open arms. Rose's boyfriend, Joel, moved in too. This guy doesn't work, lacks ambition, and is perfectly fine living off my mom. He mostly spends his days playing video games and moaning about how hard it is to land a job these days. Meanwhile, Rose dropped out of college and just hangs around the house, not doing much. Mom covers everything for them, their food, clothes, phone bills, doctor visits, the works. Over the years, I've kept my distance from my family. I still send birthday gifts and holiday cards, but visiting isn't really on the agenda, because every time I go over, my mom just talks about Rose's achievements, no matter how tiny, while ignoring anything I've done. It's draining and makes me feel kind of invisible, so I usually find a reason to bail early. So, last Sunday, I was chilling with my morning coffee at my lake house when my mom calls. She doesn't usually call unless she wants something, so I knew something was up. After some chit-chat, she dropped a bomb. Rose and Joel were tying the knot, and they wanted my lake house as some sort of wedding gift because they'd need it to raise their kid. I almost spit my coffee out. The nerve. I asked her why she was even telling me this, and she straight up said she expected me to hand over my house. When I refused, she called me selfish and went on about how family should help each other out. I reminded her that she'd kicked me to the curb at 16, and I had to fend for myself. Her response? That was different because you brought it on yourself. I couldn't believe it. So, according to her, having a boyfriend at 16 was a crime worthy of being homeless, but getting pregnant in college and freeloading was totally fine. Things got heated quickly. Mom accused me of holding grudges and punishing Rose for something that wasn't her fault. I told her that Rose's choices were her own responsibility and I wasn't going to throw away what I'd built because of her mistakes. I pointed out that Rose and Joel were adults who needed to get their act together instead of expecting me to bail them out. Mom didn't want to hear it. She insisted that since I'm doing well financially and Rose isn't, it was my duty to help her out. She hung up on me after saying she expected me to rethink my decision. I told her that wasn't happening. She threatened to tell the rest of the family how selfish I was being. I told her she could say whatever she wanted, but my lake house wasn't up for grabs. Over the next few days, both Rose and Joel started messaging me. Rose said I was being cruel and that I was dooming her kid to a life of poverty. Joel sent me this long text about how he'd always admired me and hoped I'd see the bigger picture. I told them I couldn't believe they'd bring a kid into their chaotic world and expect me to just hand over what I worked so hard for. I suggested they focus on getting jobs and saving money instead of trying to take what's mine. Then, I got a message from my mom listing all these reasons why I owe it to Rose. She went on about how successful I am and how Rose just needs a little help to get back on her feet. She said Rose deserved a fresh start and that the baby needed a stable home environment. She even said that Rose had always looked up to me, which was news to me, and that this could be a chance for us to mend our relationship. I didn't respond because I knew it would just make things worse. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for saying no? So, I was all set to chill at my lake house for the weekend when things took a wild turn. I've already had a bunch of calls and texts about this whole situation, but what happened next was seriously jaw-dropping. I rolled home from work, ready to hit the lake, when a notification from my security app popped up. There was movement at the property. Thank goodness I had those cameras installed after some creep broke into a neighbor's place last year. Curious, I checked the live feed and bam. There's Rose and her ex, Joel, right on my porch. Joel's there with a crowbar trying to bust in while Rose is playing lookout. Like, seriously? I couldn't believe they actually tried breaking into my house. I immediately called the cops and gave them the lowdown that my own sister and her ex were trying to break in. While we waited for the police, I could hear Rose telling Joel to hurry up so they wouldn't get caught, and Joel snapping back that it was her fault they had to do this because she couldn't sweet-talk me into giving them the house. When the police showed up, Rose and Joel tried to make a run for it but didn't get far. Rose tried to play it cool with the cops, claiming she thought she was allowed to be there, but I showed them the security footage of Joel trying to break in. The cops arrested Joel for attempted burglary, and Rose got tagged as an accessory. I gave my statement and handed over the footage. The officers were pretty understanding and said they'd handle it. Then, the next day, Mom was furious. She said I overreacted by calling the police and that I should have just laughed it off since they were just kids. I reminded her that Rose is a grown woman about to get married and have a baby, and asked how long she was going to keep making excuses for her. Mom accused me of being heartless and not caring about family. I pointed out that Rose and Joel were the ones who escalated things by trying to break into my house. I told her she might want to rethink whose family since she basically cut me out years ago. She hung up on me again. I spent the rest of the day dealing with the fallout. Got the locks changed at the lake house and bumped up the security with motion sensors and better cameras. I wasn't going to take any chances. Things got worse. Rose stopped reaching out, which was a relief, but Mom started calling every day with voicemails that ranged from crying to shouting. She said I was being cruel to Rose at a vulnerable time and insisted I drop the charges because family doesn't call the cops on family. I blocked her after the 5th voicemail, but she kept calling from different numbers. Eventually, I had to screen all my calls. Then, out of nowhere, she showed up at my place. I figured it was a package delivery, but nope. She started right in on me about how I was tearing the family apart, begging me to drop the charges and hand over the house. She blamed me for the legal mess they were in, saying it was all because I was being stubborn. I told her enough was enough, I wasn't going to be the scapegoat for their bad decisions. Then she said if I didn't do this, I'd regret it forever. That whole family is all we've got speech, trying to make me feel guilty about choosing possessions over family ties. For a second, I wondered if I was being too harsh. The guilt trip was strong. But then I remembered how it felt being kicked out at 16 and having to fend for myself without any help. I asked Mom if she ever regretted kicking me out, and she got all tongue-tied. I reminded her that family goes both ways and that I wasn't going to sacrifice myself for people who never had my back. Told her how she always chose Rose over me, and now she's asking me to give up my property for someone who literally tried to break into it. She stormed off, slamming the door. Later that night, Rose texted, "You've ruined my life." I was tempted to just ignore it, but couldn't help myself and replied that she was actually ruining her child's life and maybe she should think about adoption. Okay, maybe a bit petty, but I'm done being blamed for protecting what's mine. So, here's the scoop on me and my property drama. Update number 3, I knew it. Rose took to social media, calling me the villain of the story. She made a big deal about me hoarding a vacation house while she, a soon-to-be mom, was supposedly on the brink of homelessness. What she conveniently forgot to mention was the whole break-in attempt and their arrests. Her posts made me look like some greedy monster ignoring family, carefully crafted to get all the sympathy while painting me as the bad guy. Her posts were full of drama, with teary selfies of her outside some tiny apartment, begging for pity. She couldn't believe her own sister would bail on her during such a crucial time. She went on about how scared she was about the future and just wanted stability for her unborn kid. Oh, and she threw in that Joel being in legal trouble was somehow my fault, implying I was messing up their relationship. The comments were a mixed bag. Some folks called her out for airing our dirty laundry online, but others, mostly her pals and distant relatives of Joel, were all about family should help each other. They called me heartless for not stepping up to help my pregnant sister. They didn't have the full story, of course, but that didn't stop them from judging me based on Rose's skewed version of events. And then there's Mom, just jumping right in, backing Rose up. She posted saying she couldn't believe how cold-hearted I'd gotten. In every comment, she added her own tales about how difficult I've always been and how she tried to make peace. She completely rewrote history to make it look like I was the problem all along. I tried to let it slide until Rose went too far. She snapped a picture of my lake house with a caption like, "This is the house my selfish sister is keeping all to herself while I struggle." That photo? Clearly from when they tried breaking in. Suddenly, people started gossiping about the house's location and value. Some even joked about showing up to claim it for Rose. Talk about an invasion of privacy. That's when I decided enough was enough and contacted a lawyer. He recommended filing for a restraining order against Rose and Joel, citing the break-in and their social media harassment, plus sending a cease and desist letter about the posts. He pointed out that her online campaign could be considered harassment and defamation, especially since it was riling others up to possibly trespass on my property. He helped me gather all the evidence and get the paperwork rolling. The restraining order was granted pretty quickly given the evidence, but honestly, the damage was already done. It felt like my personal space was being violated again. This had become more than just about the house, it was about keeping myself safe from people with zero boundaries. Once the restraining order was in place, Rose stopped posting about me online, but then Mom decided to take things into her own hands. She wasn't part of the restraining order. One Saturday morning, I'm at the lake house, doing a bit of gardening to clear my head, when who should pull up unannounced but Mom. I was in no mood for a showdown but figured ignoring her would only make things worse. So, I stood up, brushed the dirt off my hands, and prepared for another round. Mom launched right into me, saying I destroyed my relationship with Rose and messed up our family's reputation. She lectured about how families should stick together, how Rose was struggling, and how I'd left her high and dry when she needed me most. She called me selfish for keeping my success to myself while Rose was in a bind. She said the whole town was buzzing about our family drama and how heartless I was being, and that I was making her look bad because I wouldn't help Rose. I let her talk until she was out of things to say. Then I reminded her that I wasn't going to apologize for protecting what's mine. I brought up Rose's break-in attempt, their arrests, and the online smear campaign. How on earth was any of that supposed to make me want to help them? These actions have consequences, and they can't expect me to just forgive and forget something so serious. Mom brushed it off like it was nothing, saying Rose was just desperate and didn't know what else to do. She said I should be understanding because I was once young and reckless, too. She made excuses for Rose, blaming stress from the pregnancy and saying Joel pressured her into the break-in attempt. Same old story with Mom, always making excuses for Rose. So, I told her there's a huge difference between making mistakes and not owning up to them. So, I was talking to my mom and explained to her how things were when I was Rose's age. Back then, I didn't get any freebies or sympathy. Nope, I actually got kicked out of the house just for having a boyfriend. By Rose's age, I'd been working for years, supporting myself without any help from my family. I was out there living on my own, paying my bills, and planning my future. I never expected anything to be handed to me for free. Mom tried to butt in, but I kept going. I told her how I spent years building my life without any handouts, and there was no way I was letting Rose and Joel mess it all up just because they can't seem to handle their lives. I worked way too hard to just give it all away to someone who didn't earn it or appreciate it. I've made sacrifices, put off things I wanted, and carefully planned to get where I am. Rose and Joel? They haven't done any of that, but expect to be rewarded anyway. Things got pretty heated. Mom accused me of being bitter and holding on to old grudges. She said I was punishing Rose for stuff that happened ages ago and should just let it go for the sake of family. According to her, I was being petty and vindictive instead of focusing on family unity. She thought I should be the bigger person because I'm in a position to help and should do it without expecting anything in return. I told her I was just standing up for myself for the first time, and if she and Rose couldn't handle it, that's not my problem. I even suggested she could kick Rose out or maybe even give up her own house for them if she believed so much in sacrificing for family. Why should I be the only one making sacrifices? Mom left angry, and I didn't hear from her or Rose for a few days. I tried getting back to my regular routine, but I knew this wasn't over. Then, the social media madness resumed. People, including mutual friends, started messaging me. Some were begging me to reconsider, while others were sending nasty notes. Folks I hadn't talked to in years suddenly had so much to say about my personal business. Some even offered to mediate between me and Rose, while others outright called me cold-hearted. I realized staying quiet wasn't cutting it. Rose's version of events was taking over, and my side wasn't being heard. So, I decided to share my story. I wrote a post explaining everything, like how I was kicked out at 16, struggled for years juggling school and work, and how I eventually built a career that let me buy my lake house. I laid out the long hours, sacrifices, and determination it took to get where I am today. No one helped me when I was homeless and desperate, yet I survived and thrived on my own. Then I laid out Rose's situation, getting pregnant in college, dropping out, moving back home with her out-of-work boyfriend, and looking for handouts while doing nothing to earn trust or respect. I detailed how they've been mooching off Mom, rent-free and not contributing to the household. And finally, I described the breaking point, when they tried breaking into my house. I even included a screenshot of the security footage showing Joel with a crowbar and Rose keeping watch. I made it super clear that the lake house was mine, bought with my money after years of hard work. I wasn't obligated in any way to hand it over, especially not to people treating me like an ATM. I emphasized that their actions were not only entitled but actually criminal, and they were facing legal consequences for their choices, not because of anything I did. The post caught fire quickly. Tons of comments poured in with support, calling out the entitlement and manipulation I faced. Some people shared similar stories about toxic family dynamics, and others offered advice. A few even asked why I didn't go no contact sooner. Truth is, I didn't have a good answer. Maybe I hoped things would get better, or maybe I feared the fallout. Maybe it was the guilt instilled in me since childhood, that whole family first thing. Whatever the reason, I was finally seeing things clearly. Not everyone was on my side. Some family members thought I should have kept it private. I told them if they didn't shut up, I'd post their messages next. Part of me felt guilty, but then I remembered how publicly Rose and Mom campaigned against me. They aired our dirty laundry first, twisting the facts. I was just setting the record straight with the truth. If they didn't like the consequences of their actions being exposed, they shouldn't have acted that way in the first place. So, I immediately got bombarded with angry texts from her, accusing me of ruining her reputation and messing up her and Joel's future. I couldn't help but think, what future? They didn't have jobs, no education, and zero plans except mooching off others. Seriously, what future did she think I was messing up? They weren't even trying to build one. It felt like their only goal was to take credit for everything I had worked for. When Mom chimed in, her messages were more about pleading than anger. She begged me to delete the post, saying it would shame the family and create permanent rifts. She thought I was dragging private matters out in public and making things harder for everyone. She even claimed she was only trying to help both me and my sister find a solution that worked for all of us. But I told her this whole mess was their own doing. They attacked me while I kept quiet, and I made it clear that I wasn't going to be the family pushover anymore. If they came for me again, I wouldn't hold back. That night, a friend told me Rose and Joel were freaking out, with Joel even threatening to sue me for defamation. I found it hilarious. Everything I posted was true, and I had proof. Besides, what money would he use to sue me? He could barely afford a place to live, let alone legal fees. It was just another empty threat, like everything else about him, just another attempt to bully me into giving them what they wanted. That night, I felt a huge sense of relief. For the first time in years, I was standing up for myself and wouldn't let them guilt trip or manipulate me anymore. It felt amazing to finally draw a line and say, enough is enough. Then, in update 5, my phone rang, and it was Rose. I almost let it go to voicemail but decided to answer, ready for her usual blame game. I even started recording, just in case I needed it for legal reasons. But instead of her usual accusations, I heard deep sobbing. It wasn't her typical crocodile tears but genuine, gut-wrenching crying. Before I could ask anything, she burst out saying Joel had left her, blaming her for all their problems and bailing on the wedding. He called her toxic and said he couldn't handle her anymore. Just like that, he walked out on her and the baby without a care. She kept repeating how lost and alone she felt, saying she didn't know how she'd manage raising a child by herself with no job, no savings, and only Mom for support. She admitted she was at rock bottom and didn't know how to move forward. She called me because she felt she had nobody else to turn to. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Her pain seemed real for once, and I understood the mess she was in with Joel leaving. But then my anger kicked back in. I kept calm but was firm in my response. I wasn't going to be swayed by her tears or crisis. I'd been through tough times myself without any help, and she could do it, too. I told her she was facing the consequences of her own choices. She chose to have a baby without a plan, with a guy who couldn't be a stable partner. I questioned what she was thinking. Did she actually believe Joel was ever going to step up and be reliable? She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I reminded her how she had been attacking me for weeks, trying to guilt me into giving her what I'd worked for, and even breaking into my house with Joel thinking it was okay to take my stuff. Her current situation was a direct result of her choices. She needed to understand that. There was a moment of stunned silence on her end, but I wasn't done. I had years of frustration bottled up. I told her life isn't a fairy tale where others fix your mistakes. How did she plan to raise a child when she couldn't even look after herself? Did she expect Mom to solve all her problems, or was she still naive enough to think I'd come to her rescue despite everything? I told her it was time to start taking responsibility and stop expecting everyone else to bail her out. Every time things got tough for her, I told her she needed to face reality and stop living in a fantasy where everything magically works out with zero effort. Finally, she spoke up, her voice shaky and weak, saying I was being stone cold and didn't understand how hard her life was or the pressure she was under. She argued that I couldn't possibly get it because I didn't have kids and had never been in her shoes. She thought I was being heartless when she needed support and hoped I'd show some compassion despite our differences. I laughed and told her that I knew exactly how tough life could be because I'd been through it. I reminded her how I got kicked out at 16 with no safety net and nobody to call for help. I was even younger than she is now and completely on my own. But I survived and thrived. The difference between us? I took responsibility and made something of myself while she blamed others for her mistakes. I faced my challenges head on instead of expecting others to fix them for me. The line went silent again. I didn't wait for her response. I told her it was time to grow up and hung up. I felt no guilt or doubt. Rose made her choices and now she had to face the consequences. It wasn't my job to fix her life. She needed to learn to stand on her own 2 feet like I had to do years ago. Maybe this would be the wake-up call she needed to finally start taking responsibility for herself and her child. Update 6. Last night, my doorbell rang out of the blue. I wasn't expecting anyone, and after everything that happened, I was a bit wary of surprise visitors. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Mom looking disheveled. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were wrinkled, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. I crossed my arms and waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Before she could say anything, I stopped her. I told her if she was here to lecture me about Rose or to ask me to fix her mess, she should save her breath. I wasn't interested in another round of guilt trips or emotional manipulation. I had made my position clear and it wasn't going to change. She looked shocked, opening and closing her mouth without saying a word. I didn't let her recover. I let loose everything I'd held back for years. All the hurt, anger, and resentment that had been building since I was 16 just poured out. It was like a dam broke, and I couldn't have stopped it even if I wanted to. I told her she'd been the worst mother I could imagine. I asked her how she could kick out a 16-year-old for having a boyfriend, throwing me to the wolves without a second thought. I asked how she could sleep at night knowing she let me fend for myself as a teenager while Rose got chance after chance with no consequences. I reminded her how I struggled to finish high school while working to support myself, how I went to bed hungry more times than I could count because I couldn't afford both food and rent. I asked if she ever thought about what I was going through or if she just wiped me from her mind as soon as I walked out the door. Her hands trembled as she tried to make excuses about being stressed back then. I cut her off. I told her stress didn't justify abandoning one child while coddling another to the point of enabling bad behavior. I pointed out how she spent years bending over backward for Rose, cleaning up her messes, and now she had the audacity to expect me to do the same. I reminded her that she created this situation by teaching Rose that someone would always be there to fix her problems. She raised Rose to be dependent and entitled, and now she was dealing with the consequences of her parenting choices. She flinched as my voice rose. I told her I wouldn't be the family's punching bag anymore. And if she thought she could guilt me into it, she was delusional. I was done being the scapegoat, the villain, the one expected to sacrifice everything while getting nothing in return. I built my life without their help, and I wasn't going to let them tear it down now. She finally spoke weakly, saying I was being unfair, that she'd made mistakes but was only trying to keep the family together. She claimed she loved both her daughters equally and wanted a solution that worked for everyone. She said she was just trying to be a good mom to both of us in the best way she knew how. I laughed and told her if she wanted a united family, she should have treated her kids equally instead of making me the villain while portraying Rose as a helpless victim. I pointed out that her idea of keeping the family together seemed to involve me giving up everything while Rose did nothing. Honestly, it wasn't real family stuff, it felt more like they were just using me. A real family has each other's backs, but this was just about taking from one person to hand over to another. She looked pretty upset, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I told her straight up that this was her problem, not mine, and if she ever showed up at my place with this nonsense again, I wouldn't hesitate to report her for harassing me. I suggested she should help Rose learn how to be a bit more independent and self-reliant instead of always expecting others to bail her out. Rose really needed to figure out how to stand on her own, and her mom needed to stop encouraging her bad habits. She tried to argue back, saying she was just trying to help Rose, but I cut her off. I pointed out that she'd only ever focused on one kid, and I wasn't going to let her or Rose mess up everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. I've put in too much effort over the years, and I wasn't about to throw it all away just because they couldn't get their stuff together. She just stood there, looking stunned, opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. I didn't wait for her to find the words, I shut the door right in her face and told her to figure it out yourselves. Yeah, it was a bit harsh, but I was done. They'd pushed me too far, and I wasn't going to keep pretending everything was fine. I'm sure she'll probably tell everyone I'm the bad guy, but I'm okay with that. I've decided to cut off all contact with a lot of them. I've blocked their numbers, unfollowed them on social media, and told my lawyer to deal with any future correspondence. I'm just over the drama, manipulation, and feeling like I owe them something. I deserve to live in peace and stability, and if that means ditching some toxic family members, then so be it. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real life stories happening around you.